My name's Joe Mathers. Been driving a cab for over 3 decades. I've seen drunk college kids puking out the window, men with blood on their hands begging not to be taken to the cops. Even a guy once tried to offer me a human tooth as payment. But nothing, and I mean nothing, comes. Close to the night, I picked up the last passenger. It was around 2:48 a.m. on a dead Thursday. Fog thick as soup blanketed the outskirts of Bangor, Maine. I was cruising Route 117, barely any cars, just the soft buzz of the radio and my own tired breathing. My shift was almost over, and all I wanted was a hot shower and a cold beer. That's when I saw her, a woman, standing by the road. No phone in hand, no purse, just a long, flowing black dress that didn't match the weather, thin, like funeral silk. Her face was turned away from the road, like she was listening to something far away. A whisper maybe. I slowed to a crawl, flicked the high beams. She didn't flinch. I rolled down my window. "You all right, miss? Need a ride?" Slowly, so painfully slowly, she turned to me. Her face, that was pale. Not sick pale, but washed out, like the color had been drained from her entirely. Her eyes were wrong, too wide, and her lips stitched shut, not sewn like with thread. No, they were clenched together, unnaturally tight, as if something beneath the skin was keeping them closed. She raised her arm and pointed to the back seat, and like a goddamn idiot, I let her in. The second the door clicked shut, my rearview mirror cracked clean down the center. I swear to God, I didn't hit a bump. Didn't break hard. It just shattered, one perfect fracture splitting the mirror in two. I looked at her through the broken glass. She was sitting perfectly still, hands folded in her lap. I tried to speak, asked her where she was headed. No answer. She just tilted her head to the right. Not like a nod, more like a glitch. That's when I smelled it. Rot. Like something dead had been locked in the trunk for weeks. I rolled the windows down, trying not to gag. "You sure you're okay back there?" I asked again, glancing nervously at the rear view. The broken shards showed her body, but no reflection of her face. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and then she whispered. Only it didn't come from her mouth. It came from inside my damn head. "Keep driving." My stomach dropped. I should have slammed the brakes. Told her to get the hell out, but I couldn't. My hands were locked to the wheel, like I was on autopilot. My foot pressed the gas, and we rolled deeper into the fog-drenched woods. No GPS, no cell signal, no idea where the hell I was going. We drove in silence for 20, maybe 30 minutes. Trees on either side of the road began to look twisted, like they'd been burned and regrown crooked. Branches reached out like arms, scraping the cab roof. And then, without warning, she started humming. Low guttural, a tune I somehow recognized but couldn't place. It made my skin crawl, like fingernails dragging down my spine. I clenched my teeth so hard my jaw popped. I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled over. Or I tried to. The brakes refused to respond. I was still pressing them, both feet, panicking, heart thudding like a drum. But the car kept rolling forward like it was possessed. That's when she finally spoke, out loud this time. "Almost there," she said in a voice that wasn't hers. It was a deep, male voice, like 100 voices layered into one. I turned around, and I wish I never had, because the woman in my back seat was no longer alone. There were faces pressed up against the cab windows. Not outside, inside the glass. Dozens of them, screaming, moaning, eyes bleeding. mouths wide open as if they were trapped behind the glass trying to claw their way out. One of them looked exactly like me. I slammed my eyes shut, counted to 3, opened them, gone. But she was still there, still humming, still smiling. And that's when I realized the road ahead was gone. Just blackness, empty, endless. I don't know how long we drove. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. Time had turned into molasses, slow and sticky. Outside, the windshield was just nothing. No stars, no moon, no road signs, until a faint green glow blinked into view up ahead. Mile marker 0. It was a crooked metal pole, half swallowed by the fog. The numbers were rusted, glowing faintly like something radioactive. But that wasn't what froze my blood. What made my hands tremble and my foot come off the gas was the fact that I'd passed this sign before. I was sure of it. Same dent in the side. Same rotted wooden cross nailed to the base. Same bouquet of dead black roses wrapped in plastic, as if someone had laid them for a grave. Almost there, the woman whispered again. That same voice, that impossible, guttural, stitched-together voice of many, like static whispering through 1,000 radio channels at once. I turned in my seat and faced her, but she wasn't there anymore. She was gone. The back seat was empty. The cab lights flickered. I slammed the brakes, and this time they worked. The car squealed to a stop, and I opened the door, stumbling out into the fog. "Hey," I shouted. "Where the hell are you?" Silence. Then I heard it, the sound of wheels turning behind me. I spun around. My cab was driving away on its own. No driver, no headlights, just moving, like it had a mind of its own. I chased it, boots slamming into the gravel, but the fog swallowed it whole. I screamed again. Nothing answered. And then, the silence broke. A scream, not human, erupted from the trees. It was wet, like a throat torn open mid-scream. It echoed around me, from all directions. The air grew colder. The ground beneath my feet pulsed, like a heartbeat. And in the mist, I saw shapes. Dozens. Tall, stick-thin figures, all in black. Eyes glowing faint orange. Their heads twitched and jerked like broken mannequins. They began to approach. I ran. No sense of direction. Just pure animal panic. Branches whipped my face. Something sliced my jacket. Something else grabbed my arm and yanked me sideways. But when I looked, there was nothing there. Just air, ice cold and heavy. I tripped and rolled down a hill, smashing into a tree. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the forest anymore. I was in a cabin. Small, rotting wood walls. One crooked chair. A table. And in the center of that table, my cab keys. I stepped forward and picked them up with shaking hands. Then the walls began to bleed. Not figuratively, literally. Dark, tar-like blood oozed from the ceiling, the corners, even the damn table. The chair creaked, though no one sat in it. Until suddenly, someone did. It was her, the woman. Except now, her face had changed. Her lips were wide open, but there were no teeth, no tongue, no throat, just an empty, endless black hole, like staring into death itself. "You brought me here," she said. "I didn't," I stammered. "You picked me up," she growled. And then, the walls collapsed. Not caved in, collapsed, like a stage set pulled down by ropes. Behind them was nothing, just more blackness. But behind her was the cab, running, waiting. She pointed to it. Her jaw detached with a sickening crack and fell open. longer than any human jaw should. "Drive," she snarled, and without thinking, I obeyed. I don't remember getting back into the cab. 1 second, I was standing in that collapsing cabin, staring at her unhinged face, her endless black mouth, and the next, I was behind the wheel, hands trembling, engine humming like a heartbeat in my ears. The headlights flickered. The fog was thicker now, liquid almost, like driving through milk that hated you. The woman sat behind me again, silent now, but the air was heavy, like it was made of grief or rot. I drove because I couldn't do anything else. My hands wouldn't respond when I tried to stop. My foot stayed glued to the gas. I wasn't in control anymore. I was just a passenger in my own body. The road beneath us twisted unnaturally, curves that defied physics. Sometimes I saw buildings that shouldn't exist, upside-down churches with weeping statues, bridges that led nowhere, motels with every room window glowing red. At one point, I passed another cab, my cab. It had me inside it, or another me. The other Joe didn't look at me. His eyes were locked on the rearview mirror, where something dark and spider-like sat behind him, crawling over the seats with too many arms. I screamed. The woman behind me laughed, sound like chains being dragged through a slaughterhouse. And then the clock on the dashboard ticked. 3:33 a.m. But it stayed there, even as the road stretched for miles. Even as we passed mile marker 0 again, the time never changed. I'd entered a loop, a prison. I was driving forever. I began to cry. I don't even remember when the tears started. I just knew this wasn't real. Couldn't be. That's when she leaned forward, so close I could feel her breath. Cold, like morgue air. "You know what happens now, Joe?" I didn't answer. She whispered it anyway. "I become you." My eyes darted to the rearview mirror, and my heart turned to stone. Because in the mirror, I wasn't there. The seat was empty. She was now behind the wheel, smiling. But when I turned around, I was still holding the steering wheel, still sitting in the driver's seat. That's when it hit me. I wasn't real anymore. I was the passenger now. I was the ghost. She'd taken my place. My memories began to slip like a sandcastle washed by waves. My name, my face, my childhood, they unraveled into dust. And then I was gone. A week later, another cabbie on the outskirts of Maine picks up a quiet man in the early morning hours. The man wears a driver's jacket. He doesn't say a word, just hands over an address that doesn't exist. When the cabbie glances in the rearview mirror, the man is smiling, and his eyes are empty black holes. I've always hated silence. Not the kind you get in your apartment at night, but the kind that feels like something's listening on the other end. That night, the silence wasn't just present, it was thick, choking, like smog made of whispers. My name is Michael Trent. I've been driving a cab in Chicago for nearly 20 years. Graveyard shift only. I used to say I preferred the calm, but the truth is, I couldn't sleep at night. Something about the dark calls to people like me. Lonely souls, unsaid regrets, and secrets they only tell a stranger behind the wheel. I've heard everything, from confessions to near-death experiences, but I never believed in ghosts. Until the night of October 13th. That's when I picked up him. I got the call at 2:47 a.m. Pick up on Wabash and 31st Underpass. I hesitated. That area is shady even on good nights. Homeless tents, graffiti smeared walls, the faint smell of piss and misery. But I needed the cash. Bills were late, rent due. When I pulled up, the street was empty, no lights. Just my high beams cutting through the dark like a knife. I tapped the horn. A man stepped out from the shadows. He looked like he'd walked out of a black and white movie. Tall, thin, a charcoal black suit that shimmered like oil in the headlights. His shoes were polished, too clean for that neighborhood. A fedora covered most of his face. He opened the rear door and slid in without a sound. "Where to?" I asked, checking him in the mirror. He looked up slowly. I caught a glimpse of his eyes. Black, solid black. No whites, no iris. Just darkness. "Just drive. I'll tell you where." His voice wasn't deep or menacing. It was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm you hear in a funeral home. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "All right," I mumbled, pulling away from the curb. We headed north on Wabash. Traffic lights blinked red over empty intersections. Chicago never truly sleeps, but that night, it was like the city had been drained of life. No cars, no people, just me, my cab, and the man in the black suit. I kept checking the mirror, but no matter how I adjusted it, I couldn't see his face clearly. It was like it refused to be captured by reflection. Only the outline, and those awful black eyes when he looked up. At 3:01 a.m., he finally spoke again. "Turn left here." We were near an abandoned rail yard, fenced off for years. I hesitated. "You sure? There's nothing there." He didn't respond, just stared at me. I obeyed. As I turned, my headlights caught something. A woman standing by the fence. Motionless, barefoot. Her hair hung over her face, and her dress looked soaked. "Stop the car." I did. He opened the door and stepped out. No sound, no footfall. The woman didn't move as he approached her. Then she looked up. Her face, it was rotted. Half her cheek was missing, maggots squirming in the wound. Her lips were stitched shut with black thread. But the eyes, they were just like his. Black, endless. I should have driven away, but I couldn't. My limbs wouldn't move. He turned to face me and smiled. One more passenger. The woman floated, not walked, floated into the cab. She sat directly behind me. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, like something heavy sat on it. "Keep driving," he said, now seated beside her. I drove. We cruised through neighborhoods that didn't exist on my GPS streets. I knew like the back of my hand had different names now. Stores I passed every day were boarded up or just gone. It felt like I was driving through a ghost version of Chicago. The woman in the back hadn't made a sound, but I could hear her breathing. Wet, shallow, labored. The man in the black suit just stared at me. At one point, I dared to look in the mirror. She was watching me. Her stitched lips twitched like she was trying to speak. That's when the radio crackled, a high-pitched whine that stabbed straight into my skull. I reached to shut it off, but a voice hissed through the static. "You shouldn't have picked him up." I yanked the volume knob. Dead silence again. I wanted to scream, to jump out of the cab and run, but my hands wouldn't leave the wheel. It was like I was under hypnosis. "Next stop," he said casually, "Ravenswood Cemetery." I froze. "What? That place is locked after dark." "I can't." "You can." His voice dropped an octave. It felt like it crawled inside my ears and sat in my brain. The gates of the cemetery stood open when we arrived. No lock, no chain, just rusted iron creaking in the wind. drive-in, I turned the cab slowly onto the dirt path, winding through rows of crooked gravestones. Fog poured in unnaturally thick, making the headlights almost useless. I could feel the car slowing on its own, even as my foot pressed the gas. The cab stopped by itself. I didn't even touch the brakes. Then the back doors opened. The woman stepped out, gliding through the fog toward a specific grave. He followed behind her. They stood still for a few seconds, then both turned to me. "She thanks you," he said. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice shaking. He smiled wider this time. His teeth weren't human. A mother who lost her tongue. She turned slowly, revealing her stitched lips again. One by one, the stitches began to pop. Black blood leaked down her chin as she whispered, "He's next." I put the car in reverse and sped out of the cemetery, nearly taking down a headstone. Gravel crunched under the tires like bone. When I made it back to the main road, I realized they were still in the back seat. The lights in the city had changed. Red traffic lights flickered like dying embers. Street signs had different names, ones that didn't exist. Doomer Avenue, Grief Lane, Widow's Path. I turned back. Empty seats. I looked in the rearview mirror. They were still there, only visible through the mirror. Motionless. Watching. Suddenly, the cab shuddered and the lights flickered. The engine died, and the car came to a stop in the dead center of the intersection. I stepped out, desperate for air. Then I heard a third door creak open, but no one had opened it. Footsteps, barefoot, slapping against the pavement. I turned and saw a child. A boy. Couldn't have been more than 7. Pale, skinny, wearing torn pajamas with rocket ships on them. He stood inches from the car. "I used to have a dad like you," he whispered, until he let him in. I backed away. Let who in? But the boy just stared at the back seat. I looked too. Only the man was there now. The woman was gone. And the boy? He opened his mouth and screamed. But it wasn't a child's scream. It was deep, ancient, like centuries of agony crammed into one horrible noise. Then the boy collapsed into ash. Gone. I stumbled back into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and turned the key. The engine roared back to life, and the man in the black suit smiled. "Now you're one of us." I didn't know how long I drove. Time didn't feel real anymore. My watch spun wildly. My phone screen showed glitching static. Outside, the buildings morphed, windows bleeding black liquid, streetlights flickering like dying stars. My hands were trembling, white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The man in the back hadn't blinked. His black eyes reflected no light. My rearview mirror cracked as I stared into them. A long hairline fracture crawling across the glass like a spider's leg. "Why are you doing this to me?" I finally asked, voice breaking. He leaned forward slowly. "You picked me." "No, I was dispatched. It was just a ride." "There's no such thing as just a ride, Michael." He said my name like he owned it. "You've driven liars, cheaters, runaways. But tonight, you're driving yourself." I shook my head. "What the hell does that mean?" He didn't reply. Instead, he pointed. "Take the next exit. It's time to go home." I looked outside. We were no longer in the city. We were somewhere old. The roads were cracked, narrow, lined with rotting trees. The sky above wasn't sky. It was a blanket of faces, twisted in silent screams, slowly shifting like clouds. Then I saw it. My childhood house. White picket fence. Dead lawn. Porch light flickering. The same house my father died in. I slammed the brakes. No, No, we're not going in there. He leaned closer. You already are. Suddenly, I wasn't in the car anymore. I was standing in the hallway of that house. My house. I could smell it. Mildew, dust, and something else. Coppery. Blood. The wallpaper was peeling, the floor creaking under invisible footsteps. I heard a door slam upstairs. Then sobbing. I knew that cry. It was me. I ran up the stairs, legs heavy like concrete, heart pounding like a war drum. I reached the bedroom door. My childhood bedroom. Slowly, I pushed it open. Inside, a younger version of me, no older than 10, sat in the corner, hugging his knees. His eyes were wide with terror, and looming over him was my father, but not as I remembered him. His skin was gray, rotted. One eye dangled from its socket. His arms were longer than they should be, stretching, cracking, his hands dragging on the floor like a marionette. He turned to me. Why did you let them in, Mikey? He gurgled the words like vomit. I backed away. You're dead. You died when I was 12. He grinned with half a jaw. But you never let me leave. He lunged. I screamed, tripping over my own feet, falling down the stairs. My spine cracked against every wooden step until everything went black. I woke up, back in the cab. Sweat drenched my shirt. My heart was thundering. I was parked in front of a small building. Brick. Empty. Faded sign above the door read, Trent and Sons Mortuary, since 1922. I had never seen it before. The man in the black suit stepped out of the car. End of the line, Michael. I locked the doors. You're not taking me anywhere. He looked back and laughed, an awful, broken, dry laugh. I never had to. Then he reached through the glass. His hand passed through the window, like smoke, and gripped my neck. Cold, crushing. I choked, flailed, but it was like he had roots under my skin. You already died tonight, he hissed. You just haven't accepted it. I screamed. Flash. Sirens. Lights. I blinked. Suddenly, I was in the driver's seat, but paramedics were pulling me out. My cab had crashed into a telephone pole. The windshield was shattered. Blood smeared across the dashboard. One EMT looked pale. He wasn't breathing when we got here. He shouldn't be alive. They strapped me to a gurney. As I was wheeled into the ambulance, I saw something in the rearview mirror of the cab. The man in the black suit was sitting there, smiling. He raised a single finger to his lips, then disappeared. They said I had fallen asleep behind the wheel, that I crashed into a pole and was clinically dead for 2 minutes. But in those 2 minutes, I lived another lifetime. I quit driving after that, burned my cab. I tried moving, hiding, changing my name. Didn't matter. Every mirror in every room still shows him. Every time I close my eyes, I see the black roads again. And sometimes, when I drive at night, just to get groceries or clear my head, my GPS glitches, and I hear a soft voice in the back seat whisper, "Just drive. I'll tell you where." It was past midnight when I got the request, a pickup from the edge of town, near the old abandoned railway station. The place was dead silent except for the distant hum of the city. I pulled over, and there he was. A man in a dark coat, face obscured by shadows. No greeting, no movement, just eyes staring forward. "Where to?" I asked. "Take me to 17th and Maple," he said, voice flat, monotone. I started the meter and headed out. As we drove, The radio crackled, then went silent. I tried switching stations, static. The temperature dropped sharply. My breath fogged the windshield. I glanced back. The passenger sat perfectly still, unmoving, eyes fixed on the window. Suddenly, he vanished. The seat was empty. My heart thudded. Cold air lingered where he'd been. I slammed the brakes and spun around, checking the back seat. Empty. Then a knock on the driver's window. He was standing outside, pale and cold. "Why did you stop?" he asked, voice hollow. You vanished," I stammered. He smiled, a cruel, unnatural curve. "Nothing is as it seems." I locked the doors. The cab's lights flickered. The dashboard flicked off and on. He walked around the car, never blinking. When he reached the passenger door, it slammed open by itself. He slid in, eyes glowing faint red. The man's face twisted. "I'm not your passenger. I'm your curse." He told me how he died on that road decades ago, struck by a cab just like mine. Now, he rides every night, claiming a new driver. The cab became a prison. I tried to stop, but the engine wouldn't die. His laughter filled the car as streets blurred and twisted. I was trapped. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time lost meaning. I passed landmarks that shouldn't exist. The man whispered, "You can't leave. This ride never ends." I tried opening the doors, locked. Windows wouldn't roll down. My phone was dead. Then I saw other passengers, ghostly figures, sitting silently, staring. I was one of many now. The cab sped forward into endless night. No escape.